Hey, everybody, welcome to another episode of the Business Barbershop Podcast. I am Chris,
I'm King.
and we're back. You probably don't know this, but it's been a couple weeks since we recorded an episode. I think you were out of town, then I was out of town, and but we're back. Plenty of fun things to talk about. Let's just dive right in for today. Let's just dive right in. So we'll start with the thing that you want to talk about, which was kind of a real estate update. ADU and DADU update, kind of. So fire away.
Yep. Back when we did that series talking about those housing bills that passed, I had predicted that the ADU one was going to be more impactful than the multifamily one, and it had more to do with the fact that the ADU one created these very strict deadlines for these cities and counties, and I was right. You know, a couple of cities had already updated their ADU code almost right after the state bill passed. The city of Kent, interestingly enough, they were updating their ADU code while that bill was being passed, and they were basically revising their bill a little bit here and there while that bill was being passed. So I think it was less than 30 days from when the state bill passed that Kent had updated their code, but they were going through the planning process for months, leading up to that point. We have not seen a lot of properties get put together, or deals put together in Kent. I've seen a couple, and they were failed for profit projects, which we can dive into that in a little bit about the other predictions we made. But just to go through the other cities, the city of Everett did update their code, and they did surprise me with one of their interpretations that has drastically changed to what we're doing in Everett. We've since put together a couple deals there, so we'll talk about that. Edmonds has just updated their codes, one of the cities I'm most excited about. They have larger lots and some alley lots. I think that they'll be a great city. Redmond, I think will look a lot like Kirkland, but their drafts are done, and just they're going through like some reviews of the city. They should be putting that in place by the end of the year. And then the city of Snoqualmie, man, that's a whole different topic. They basically just copied and pasted the housing bill and made that their planning. Through the planning, and then approved it, which doesn't sound like that big of a deal. However, I have a colleague who has condoed a non-conforming ADU on their property, and the city sued him for saying that you should be able to condo an ADU, even though the state law says that you can, and the state laws precede city law. And I think we talked about that on a previous episode. Right?
And
so still no and we got the results back. The hearing examiner didn't reverse it. So. That's
is the hearing examiner a city of Snoqualmie type of a person, or are they?
No. They act as a mediator. They're not a judge, but they act like one. And you have to, if you want to, my colleague, if he wants to take it further, he'll go to court. But he's already racked up $30,000 worth of legal bills, so he's not excited about trying to go down that path.
Yeah. Interesting. Okay, let's talk about. What was the fun one? Edmonds.
Yeah. So, Everett and Edmonds. So, I think Everett, actually, I'm more excited to talk about Everett because Everett really, what they did is they said that they would allow 2 ADUs for every primary dwelling that's on the site. So, that means that if you started with a 4-plex, you can add up to 8 ADUs.
Interesting.
Right? So now there's a realistic use of some of these things. If you start with a property that's got 4 units on the property already, you're probably not going to find enough land or space in the existing building to squeeze in 8 more units. Right?
Do you still have to comply with setbacks and like lot size requirements inside of that number?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. And the setbacks for ADUs are different than primary dwellings, but they still have their own setback requirements. But we'll talk. So, the reason why I'm really excited to talk about Everett is because that is an example of where I saw a city and I said, here's some things that we think might happen, but we didn't have our spotlight on them until they did something different than the other cities. The reason why that's such a good case study is because of this. The traditional ADU business has been find lots to have enough room to build extra units around it, You pay a premium cost per square foot to build a tiny house, because in a 1,000 square foot house, we're still trying to stick in 2.5 bathrooms and a kitchen, right?
Yep.
Which is the same amount of bathroom count that you could put into a 3,000 square foot house, and it would service it, right? Powder room, bedroom for the 2-3 other bedrooms, and then a master suite. For sure, about 2,500 square feet. 2.5 bath homes would work for 2,500 square foot homes. And so when you copy that business plan of like, we're going to turn the original house into a condo, and then we're going to build an ADU either attached to it like a townhouse style or detached, you need to be in an area where people will pay a huge premium for a small house that has abnormal parking. And that's that's going to be limited to only areas that usually have a higher value. I think Redmond and Edmonds fits that kind of area, which is why I won't be surprised to see people put deals together in those cities. However, Everett does not have the value that gets a traditional ADU developer like myself excited to do deals there. Because you look at how much new construction homes sell for there, and it just doesn't pencil if you follow the exact same business plan as Seattle. They definitely have the property types and houses. They have the little houses and the alley lots. So you could copy the exact same thing people are doing in Seattle in Everett, and the layouts there, right? Because the first thing is we talked about like the lots that need multiple access points. And so Tacoma, right, Everett, and Seattle represent good case studies of what an ideal neighborhood looks like, because they were big cities a long time ago. But Tacoma and Everett, their values aren't high enough that when you copy what people are doing in Seattle in those cities, it doesn't pencil. So how are we making deals in Everett work? They're letting us add accessory dwelling units to existing multifamilies. So let's suppose that someone has a 2-unit, a 2-unit duplex, that when we turn it to condos, it goes up in value, because what happens with a single family home on the Seattle ADU plans is the house is on this long lot, and then maybe it's a small house on the corner. When we condo it, we're cutting it so the land it's on is smaller, and then the rest of the dirt is where we build. So the house retains a good portion of its value, but it does lose value by being converted to a condo. It has to share utilities, share parking, loses some yard, right?
Yep.
And so it always goes backwards, but the whole hack is it goes backwards, a modest percentage, maybe 10, 20% of the value of the home. And then you do your build cost and then see if you have margin. And with the expensive build cost, that drop in value can only be so much. What's happening with Everett and the way we put deals together there is because it's a small nuance. They're allowing you to do them to existing multifamily. So if I start with a duplex that when I turn it to condos, even if I make it the units own less of the land, the value of condos might be higher when you add all their values together, even if they don't own the land around it anymore. So when my clients bought a duplex for a modest price and below 600, and we popped out that even if the duplex was broken up into condos where they own the land underneath it, but not the huge yard behind it, just right underneath it, the value actually goes up because we're turning 2 units into condos instead of just one. A multifamily being converted to condos might push up the value, where a single family home being converted to a condo and losing some of the land always goes down. So in this case, the value goes up just a little bit, but it means that we ultimately got the dirt for free. And then because they're letting you add so many units, we can try to come up with something creative to add more units to it. So most of the time, though, you're very limited in that, because multifamily properties already eat up a bunch of the property land. And so building more units around it doesn't work most of the time. But you can find a handful that you can. Here's the other place where it works for Everett. One of my other clients did this, completely different play. This is actually what I predicted we would see more of in Everett. And we're seeing not Everett, in Tacoma. When we were going through our Tacoma predictions, I said, building a new DADU doesn't make sense. But if you start with a multifamily and you add ADUs to it to make the density count increase, then it'll just be evaluated not as a condo project, but as a larger, higher income producing multifamily. And that is happening in Everett. So when my clients bought a multifamily, he had a triplex and then a non-conforming house. So the city makes you, they won't say that's 4 primary dwellings. They're going to try to pick one of the 2 buildings. And usually they'll take the newer one. So the house was originally permitted as a single family house. And later on, they turned it to a non-conforming house and then built a conforming triplex on it. So in their eyes, the triplex is the primary dwellings. There's 3 of them, which means that there could be up to 6 ADUs. Now, with 2 buildings on the site, there's no room to add 6. However, we asked the city, hey, can we add extra living spaces in the basement of that house? Because it's an old Craftsman.
Mm-hmm.
And our first question was, hey, can we do it in the form of like turning more primary dwellings? And they're like, no, you can't get more primary dwellings under zoning, and there's no room for parking. But then they came back and said, well, wait a minute, actually you can. This is how you could do it. If we add ADUs to that basement, then we will allow for it because there's 3 primary dwellings and we're not expanding the footprints. And because that area was near a major transit center, they don't require parking spots for the ADU. So as we add parking spots in that basement, we don't have to accommodate extra parking. So he was able to squeeze in 2 more studios and went from a 4-unit to a 6-unit, and it's going to bump up to the value, not a full 50%, but close to it, 30-40%, by finishing off 2 small units in it. So what I was hoping to see in Tacoma, we're seeing in Everett now. And the reason, there's another aha moment I had that didn't dawn on me until we evaluated Kent, because Kent, their ADU code is pretty good. They have very aggressive setbacks, only 2.5-foot interior setbacks for ADUs, which is crazy, right? That you can go 2.5 feet up to the property line, right?
Yeah.
Practically 0. Usually you need like commercial zoning for that kind of a setback, like high rise stacked right next to each other kind of a thing.
Right.
And we haven't seen that much in Kent. And Kent only has a small part of their town that has alleys, and it's the worst part of Kent, so no one wants to do them there. There's no value there. And in the suburban neighborhoods, the layouts look more like Kirkland, a bunch of mid-century homes, built between the 40s to the 80s. Handful of communities built newer, but most of them were 40s to 80s. And it's kind of weird to do backyard cottages, but some might work, right? But the numbers just don't pencil great. And their code now has been active for 1 year and 2 months. And the only 2 projects I've seen people try to do there, they lost money. They developed it. They did the math on building it, and it didn't pencil. So they tried to sell it as a permit ready site, and they may have sold, but there wasn't a lot of interest when I saw them go for sale in circles. And their values are better than Everett. And it made me realize that we kind of overlooked a fact that was kind of obvious. If every city has this aggressive accessory dwelling unit code, then if your city doesn't highlight as one of the best cities to develop based off of value and the land that's available, if you're not aggressive like what Everett did, you're going to see 0 changes, because as there's not enough developers to do all these cities, and being
it's a math game, right? Nobody wants to do free projects.
Well, it's just like, we'll take Kent as a case study, right? Auburn's going to update their code, Des Moines, Burien, Renton, all surrounding cities, Maple Valley, Covington. If they all look the same, wouldn't I just go to the best ones of that group?
Yeah. Well, you certainly wouldn't go to the ones where you're not going to make any money.
Well, and also, even if you did figure out a way to make money on it, if this, look at the city of Auburn, their values are worse than Kent. Kent's worse than Renton, right? Well, if all their code looks the same, wouldn't I just do Renton only?
Yeah. But you probably would do the one with the biggest spread, right? The one with the biggest profit margins, depending on
the biggest spread, easiest to work with, and And the key is, for Everett, the only reason why I get a bigger spread out of Everett is because they decided to get more aggressive than what the state required them to.
Yep.
And it worked with the landscape of what they have available. There's still not going to be massive changes in Everett, but at least they got my attention, and we're putting some together on a few properties that will work.
Totally.
But if everyone just copies and pastes the same thing, and your city doesn't have a high cost per square foot like Seattle does, the better neighborhoods in Seattle are better, then who cares? Yes, Edmonds has value, Redmond has value, so we'll figure out how to make money in those 2 areas. But we've put together a handful of deals in Everett, even though their values are worse than Kent, because they decided to be more aggressive with what they have. Plus, they do have the alley lot, so when you mix the 2 together, it works great. I'm sure we'll find some in Kent eventually that will work. But
here's the question though: does Kent care?
I think they do. I think that some cities want the growth, some are being forced into it, so they don't really care. But the fact that they were proactive in changing their code while the state was updating their bills, they appear to be one of the most active early on. And I remember I got an email from one of the planners at the city of Kirkland asking for how I could give recommendations, because I got through so many planning questions with them. So what would you recommend so we can get more projects done? Because they were surprised they didn't get more done. Because Kirkland's been very pro affordable housing and mid-housing stuff. They did pilot cottage programs over 20 years ago. Their code updates for ADUs happened a year and a half. It happened back in 2020 is when they updated their ADU code, similar to Seattle's. In some ways, more aggressive, right? And they haven't had nearly as many projects.
Well, it's just so expensive, and the lot sizes are just not big enough, right? In a lot of cases,
they actually have really big lots. The problem is that they're all newer construction homes. They weren't designed to be mid-housing, so there's rarely access to the backyard.
Right.
There's more,
for sure,
and they have a restrictive covenant.
Yeah, there are a couple alleys in Kirkland, but not very many.
No, and the worst part, and here's the other problem with Kirkland. It's a good problem, but it's not. It's for developers. It's a problem. Remember I mentioned how Kent and Auburn, the worst parts of town are where there's alley lots.
Yeah.
In Kirkland, it's the opposite.
Correct.
It's the best neighborhoods. You got east of Market, west of Market.
Yes.
Houghton has them. Norkirk has them, right?
Yep.
And it's like these are the best neighborhoods. And the problem with ADU developers is if you try to do ADU projects in those lots, if you don't get to the homeowner first, you're getting steamrolled by Murray Franklin, who just wants to scrape the little house, not build cottages around it, and build a monstrosity that they're going to sell for $3.5 to $6 million.
Yep.
And so
and also, what I've seen too is, and I don't know, this is just me, just like living in Kirkland. Where they can squeeze houses in, they have squeezed them in, in a lot of cases. And maybe it's just from them being proactive so long ago, but I'm always amazed at I'll be driving down the street. This is not exactly what you're talking about, but driving down the street, you see what looks like a random driveway. But if you peek your head out, they basically have put a house in the middle of the block and just done a really long, skinny driveway to get you back to the house, essentially. And there's a lot of those that are like that, where I'm like, how are you, fitting 3 houses back in this random tiny place? Just don't see that a lot of places. But
in general, here's where I do think mid-housing will have a big impact on the east side. By the way, we saw this in a couple of cottage projects done. In general, multifamily, usually what happens is there's low density residential, which is where they used to have just a single family. Now that's kind of going away, but there's those are the larger lots. And then you get to this kind of medium density multifamily layered next to higher density in a commercial. They always layer it so that way you don't go straight from a house on a quarter-acre lot next to a factory, right? It's okay, well, if it goes from houses to townhouses to neighborhood commercial where there's mixed use, then there's pure commercial, it layers the feeling of the town. So by nature then, the buyers of townhouses and condos end up being near busier roads because of that.
Yeah.
Right? They're pushed to the higher traffic arterial road areas. There are the natural inclination for developers to avoid residential lots that are near busy roads. I've been criticized for doing ADU projects in Kirkland near a busy road. I'm like, guys, we are squeezing in density, right? These projects are more comparable to townhomes that are also near busier roads, or traditional condos that are near busier roads because of multifamily. So we understand that's what our product is. So if you could do one in a quieter neighborhood, great, but you can design something that feels more kind of stacked. Just make sure that you don't overpay for the dirt. So it gives a development use for these low density single family lots that were shoved next to a busy road. Then instead of trying to complain about how people don't want a house next to a freeway, they're talking about a 2,000 plus square foot detached house. Not that the townhome and condo owners are okay with it, but that comes with almost every townhome and condo. And that's a good use for redeveloping those low density single family lots that are near the busier arterial roads, because you're squeezing into density, they're next to each other, you're next to a busy road. There's effective value, sure, but it also should help you get the land for a discount, and the buyers for that kind of product are more open to mid-housing options.
Yeah, they're more appealing because people just want something affordable in that neighborhood.
That's right.
They're gonna give up a little bit of traffic for being able to live there.
Yeah.
Right?
So we saw someone do a cottage project. There's one we saw earlier in the year in Kingsgate. The unit sold for closer to 900, and people complain like, well, in Kirkland, new construction, 3 bedrooms in the garage. You'd hope you get over $1 million. So they couldn't get it, but it was Kingsgate and it was next to a freeway. But, you know, for the owner of that dirt, you know, when everyone was just trying to figure out how expensive a house you could build there, everyone just poo-poos on the lot, right? And it's like, well, look, if it's a multifamily type thing, it's not as big of a deal. I think the ones that are also next to like power lines and stuff like that could also be the case. It doesn't mean that people are just okay with it. It means that you need to get the dirt cheaper, but you can still do something with it.
Yeah. There's a new construction with a DADU. What's DADU? What's the D stand for? Detached. Yeah. By my house, and it's been sitting for a few months. A couple different realtors on it. Yep. So I think the pricing is hard. I think the pricing is hard. Just in general, you know, right now. Hopefully this, and maybe, and I know we can talk more about this too if you want, but this maybe is like a good segue into another thing that we're going to talk about, which was, you know, the Fed talking about lowering interest rates and moving to that kind of stuff.
In
the future. But just wonder, because I didn't even look, I haven't even looked at the price, but it's like 3-4 houses down from my house. So I drive by it every day and just see the lot, or see the sign in the yard for a long time. And, you know, typically those things move over time, but, you know, I guess, I don't know if in those type of scenarios, if people would rather wait and see if they can get a number that works for them, or if they, you know, sort of creep that price down to just move on, you know. I guess it depends on what your philosophy is. It also depends on what you're into it for, but that I've definitely seen that around my neighborhood. And it's nice. It's the DADU that they have is like it's kind of like that one that you built in Juanita. Like it's a legit, you know, it's nice. It's big, and it's, you know, it's relatively spacious for being the accessory sort of unit, right? So anyway,
in what neighborhood are you in now?
Bridle Trails, basically. So just like I would call it, like, it's not the fancy part of Bridle Trails. I don't know how to describe it, but it's like right off of 70th Street exit in Kirkland. You know, there's a parking right there that's been closed. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, the big one.
Yeah, it's kind of like right back, tucked right behind there in that little neighborhood. So it's a quiet street. Like it's a corner lot. It's pretty big, but thing ain't moving for some reason. So I haven't seen what the price is, or if they've reduced it over time. I haven't seen that. I haven't even looked at it.
I'm curious to see what it is.
I
still have an ADU lot in Forbes Creek that I haven't developed yet because I'm waiting for the code to be updated.
Yeah. And they haven't. So Kirkland hasn't updated theirs to the new standard yet.
No, but they haven't. But their code was already pretty aggressive. I am excited to see what they're going to do next. They did propose maybe allowing multiple larger units instead of just one large one and 2 smaller ones. And so, but I was pretty happy with their code. I do think that they did blow up a couple of projects by doing the whole we want frontage improvements thing. And I told them, when they asked me for my recommendations on how to get more projects, my 2 I said were the frontage was a problem, and the other one was not allowing multiple driveways, because Kirkland doesn't have the alley lots that Seattle has. And so they could have the same single driveway either on the alley or whatever thing, but street parking and alley access, street parking for the front unit, alley access and street parking in the back is normal for Seattle. And if downtown Kirkland was larger, I think it could be normal there, but it's not. It's not normal, so it's just not common.
Yeah.
I think that the one
Here's
that
the
you're referencing that
so I'm
hasn't
looking at
sold,
this. Here's the
yeah,
thing.
it's actually
I
it's not
don't
a DADU.
think
It's actually this was developed as a cottage, I think.
no, they're not listing it. They're not the DADU is not listed for
I think
sale. It's the main house.
oh,
Yeah.
I see.
And I'm looking at the
Ah,
listing. I'm looking at the listing and it says in the notes, purchase DADU next door for guests, Airbnb or unique work from home space. So they must just be trying to sell just the one side of it, which I could see how that could be trouble because
yeah.
it's
Send
like
me
a
that
shared
link.
driveway. Huh?
Mm-hmm.
Send you the link?
Send me
Is
the
that what you
link
said?
to see it. Yeah.
I'll just tell
Yeah.
you the here, I'll send you the link. Hold on. Let me pause this real quick. Yeah, so but they're already built, they're already listed, but they're for some reason not selling the other side, which is kind of interesting.
I know why. I already know why. Because the other one will sell easy. And so if they can't move this unit as a condo, because they're trying to get, I mean, look, they're trying to get nearly $4 million for it, or $3 million for it. So whenever you do a project like this, and you're turning it, the problem is that once you turn a property into a condo, they're all condos, right? I actually think that in time, this impact will fade in Kirkland because, there's this attachment of calling it a condo that affects the value, but there's the reality of what's happening when you turn to a condo versus perception. In Kirkland, what's impacting the value is very much a perception thing. People think of condos, think of traditional condos, and the market there just isn't educated enough to understand it. Interestingly, in Kirkland, the ADU,
yeah, they did so they did condo this one though because it's got an HOA, $5 a month.
Yes, it has to be because if you could sell the DADU as a condo, then the main house is a condo.
Yeah.
So there's a perception of these as a condo, and the impact to the value being sold as a condo is bigger than it is in other markets because of that perception. In Seattle, they're seeing a 10 to 20% adjustment. In Kirkland, it's closer to 20-25. What's interesting though is that having done projects in both cities, I think that the Kirkland ones shouldn't be as impactful because they let you operate utilities completely independent. It's just like a short plat. So it literally is just perception. Living in these units really is just like a house. And in time, as they figure that out, I think the impact of what it'll do a value will be less. But it's too new, and I've been in too many of those conversations with Eastside agents. They just don't know, and so the clients don't know, and then they don't know together. They're confused together, and then in time, that fatigue will wear down. What's funny is in Seattle, they could take an old house, sell it as a condo, and then they'd very often be able to sell it for the same price or sometimes even more than what they paid for the house because they did a remodel in the process because so many of the houses are old, right?
Yep.
It's like a flip space. And at first they were getting it. And then now the spread has grown, and it's grown for two reasons. One, inventory. There's so many more projects in Seattle than anywhere else. So there's a fatigue from seeing more comps. Plus, actually sharing a house and ADU complex in Seattle isn't ideal. As an HOA management company who manages these things, they don't let them get separate utilities. Even the garbage, at the very least, even if you paid extra to get water meters, you're still going to share a garbage bill. And it makes it so you always have to deal with your neighbors for utilities, and it just wears on people a little bit, right? And I don't know if that should be a more than a 5% adjustment, but it does change how it is to live in it, right? It's not as aggressive as a big HOA with expensive dues, but it's not as carefree as like the Kirkland ones where they really basically on the Kirkland ones, the only thing your HOA is really doing, or whenever you have to collaborate with your neighbors on a day-to-day basis, is when the shared driveway eventually needs to be worked on.
But if it snows, who's clearing the driveway?
That's no different than two regular houses that share a private road easement.
For sure.
It has a private road maintenance agreement. So I think that spread will shift over time. But the reason I could tell you why they're not selling the DADU first, because it will sell. It's more affordable. It'll sell faster, right? Yeah. They need to see if they can sell this house for this price or close to it. If they have to drop the price too much, they can uncondo it and sell it as just one bigger property with a DADU for more money. right? So we're trying to
Yes.
figure out if we sold them as two separate, right? I could sell the main house for less, but then still get a premium for the other one. And together, is that higher than if we just uncondo it and sell it all as one?
Right. Yep. I'm
But if
trying
they
to
sell the
show
little
here.
one first, they're going to be stuck with the big one.
Yeah. Yeah, but yep. Man, that's a lot. I guess they did tear the whole thing down and build it up. It's kind of funny though. They bought it for 1.4 just basically a year ago. And they obviously, I mean, they did put a new house on it, but man,
I don't think they did it right. What they should have done is they should have made it a house plus 2 ADU projects. They would have had to do frontage improvements, but
yeah,
they would made it 3 units instead of
yeah,
one big one and one small one, and then
yeah.
you could make them all more equivalent in size, and then target like a 1.3 to 1.4 price for each one. So instead of trying to get one for 2.8, you'd build two smaller ones with a combined square footage was maybe like 3,000 for both of them combined,
Yep.
1,500 each. Then have the detached one, and then try to target like 1.2 to 1.4 for each one.
Yeah, it's hard because at 2.8, like I think there's just a lot of options out there right now in Kirkland that are just better, quite frankly.
Yep.
So
Pretty
you're
close to the
competing
freeway.
with,
Do you get any freeway noise over there?
yeah, a little. The answer is yes, but it's not distracting. Does that make sense? Like,
Yeah.
like if you're in the backyard, can you hear cars? Yeah, but not if you're inside. You would never know you were there because there's enough. There's like a buffer in between. So I don't know. I guess some people
And
might
there's
be annoyed by it, but
and it looks like there's like a townhouse community nearby.
yeah, there is right
Right.
across kind of across the street ish. It's not right across the street, but yeah, it's very close, half a block.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. And across the street, there's similar projects. And see, those ones that were, I bet you anything, those were done as a multifamily projects, right? Where they turn them into,
Yep.
then like detached or a townhouse style attached units.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's really just getting more of that kind of stuff, right?
Yep. So anyway, that I actually hadn't even looked at it until just now. So interesting stuff.
Good deep dive into the space.
Yeah. Let's talk about interest rates.
Let's talk about interest rates.
What do you so first, share the news. What is the latest news? That was today. Was it today?
Last week, Thursday last week.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
You're you're paying way more close attention to this than I am because I'm not listening.
So Jerome Powell finally has said, he's indicated that they could see rate cuts later on this year, but wouldn't say it's time. They're just going to analyze the data.
Yep.
What they said last week, and it's funny, is that the market moved some, but it didn't move a ton, which tells me that they were already expecting him to do this.
Yeah.
He said it's time. It's now. Now is the time. That it's not a wait and see. What is a wait and see from what he said is how aggressive and how fast. But he did say it's time. So in the September meeting, if he doesn't cut rates, the market's already priced a rate cut in it. And right now it's like a 3/4. It's about there's about a 2/3 to 3/4% of people who are expecting it to be a 25 basis rate cut, but there's actually a decent people hedging that it's going to be more than that. And I think that group is growing. And that data could be off because it could be pivoting, day by day. But what I do know is that the jobs report that came out on the 21st, it wasn't even a jobs report, it was a correction of a jobs report. This was 6 days ago. They said that
almost 1 million jobs, right?
Over 800,000 jobs between April 2023 to March of 2024, so over a 12-month cycle, they were off. And these were primarily business jobs. So these are people like in the finance industry, like my industry, which I could for sure see that, right?
Yep.
And then also like in the tech industry. And so I feel like if they had stretched that out and let's say they had a said that they're off by the jobs by 100 or 200,000 several months in a row, and it happened on a monthly basis, I feel like it would have been a lot more impactful to the market. And by slipping it at the end, and not only did they say it were they off for the entire year, but they released it 4 months after the period of time they're referencing. And so I feel like the impact it's had to the market is a lot less dramatic than if it hit the market at the time we were, if they said, hey, here's how many jobs were created. Oh, look, we're off by the mark by 100, 200,000. It would have had a big reaction then, and we would have seen a handful of those over the year. So I feel like by them doing it this way, it's not moving the market as much. But I think
I think also
the
though,
Fed
it's
is
like,
probably paying attention.
Yeah, although this is not data driven, you would have to have your head in the sand to say like things are not kind of weird with the economy right now, right? It's like I feel like there's just like anxiety about what is happening. You feel? I mean, are you feeling that at all? Just like I feel like things are not.
I'm not
great.
a good person to ask.
I'm not asking about that things are great for you. I just mean like in general, No.
I would say it's the exact opposite. My industry, I want to make sure I don't overspeak because we all see things from our own point of view. But in my opinion, I think that the finance industry that's dependent on interest rates, I think the mortgage industry probably more dramatic than even traditional bank. I know that we talked about a couple of regional banks failing, but quite frankly, there's no one counts how many mortgage companies fail, but trust me, there's a lot of them.
Yeah, for sure.
We were hit really hard. And so we didn't feel anxiety. We were like full blown panic. If I didn't have assets I had, rental income, but I mean, we laid off like 80-90% of the loan officers that worked at the branch, they just couldn't even pay for the most basic benefits and, whatever working here. And so, it was really kind of like in fact, I would say that what we went through in the last couple of years was as hard as the subprime meltdown for me personally. Now, I actually personally feel like what I went through during the subprime meltdown was more tragic. But if I was where I was at now, back then, it wouldn't have been as painful, right?
Yes.
My rentals were all lost a bunch of value, but most of my stuff was locked in at low rates, and so if you could weather that storm, you came out making a bunch of rent because there's some people flooding the rental market when they went through the foreclosures. So if you had rentals in the market, your rents went up really fast. And so.
But I just mean, what I'm trying to say is people have been sort of tense about the economy for a while, like just inflation, what you can afford. If everything feels more expensive, but it doesn't necessarily feel like you're making more money. Just, I think in general, so I think this news is sort of just confirmation kind of what people already could sense what was happening.
Yeah, we're all wondering, why isn't this looking worse?
Right. Yeah.
And then what we're being told is it was worse. Oh,
yeah.
Well.
Like, you guys were fudging the numbers. Why would you do that? By the way, I don't understand. It can't be that hard to figure this stuff out these days. Like, there's so much more statistical data that private companies have and have access to, like anytime they want. You'd think you'd be able to figure these things out, but they keep messing up.
Yeah. The only conspiracy there I could think of is if the group that was running Biden's camp could control that data in any way. There's that one guy that does those election predictions. He's bipartisan. I don't know. He might be in one class. He came up with this formula and said, like, if these certain things happen, you'll never win the election. Like, this certain predictable analysis of like an election. Yeah. He predicted that Trump was going to lose last time because he said that almost every time in history, if a president has a couple of things happen, like some kind of like recession, some kind of like large crisis. There's a handful of things. Economy matters. Yep. And so because he had a COVID-related recession and also COVID and some other stuff, he predicted that he wasn't going to get reelected. Anyways, I just wonder whether or not it could have been let's try to prop up and make the economy look better for Biden to get reelected. But I don't take that as like a fact. I don't believe what even I just said. That's just my best is trying to predict why, because the data is so off.
No, but I think people just mess up somehow. Who knows? Maybe
I think there's more likely that people just messed up. And people say, "How's that possible?" Like I'm just like I see it all the time.
Yeah, it's a bunch of people doing a job, and they don't look in the government. You're not rewarded for being right or accurate. All they do is just send out a press release and say, "Oops, 800K jobs off. Sorry, let's keep going." What do you think this? Do you think this interest rate? Let's say it's just like 25 basis points. Do you think that
this is what I'm predicting will happen?
Do you think that that's going to have an effect on the market around here? Like, will that open up enough room for people to move, like to take action, or that may have been waiting? Do you think people are waiting, or what do you think?
Yeah. Well, the first thing is it's not going to change mortgage rates that much. People are surprised to hear that, but mortgage bond traders, they hedge. They're hedging just like the stock market does. They're not they only are reactionary when the news comes out different than what they hope it's going to come out as.
It's been trending down for a while, hasn't it? A little bit.
Yeah.
Again, I have no idea what the rates are right now. They have a 6 in front of them, don't they? Do they have a 6?
Yep, they do. Yeah. They do. And what happened is that people started predicting. Everyone who's looking at the same data that the Fed has already been predicting that rates are going to drop, and the market's already priced. However, there's still when interest rates are such a headline news, the consumers pay more attention to what the Fed's doing, and that will change the consumer excitement. So if anything that's going to move the market more, it's going to be the fact that the Fed actually cuts rates, and they're going to see that and think, well, that means the rates are lower. Well, they didn't realize that rates had already dropped. Right. So me getting geeky back to be like, well, they've been more than a quarter lower for a couple weeks before they officially cut the rates. But if you need that so your perception shifts, then so be it. I do think, though, I've been telling investors and clients in general, like there's this whole camp of buy now, refi later, whatever. When's the right time to try to get locked in over low price? I'm officially saying at this point, this between now and the end of this year would be, if you could find something, would be wise to buy, even for regular retail purchase. Timing's there because you can still get a good deal now, and people will not react to this news. And but as more people absorb that news between now and the end of the year, and there's probably more than one rate cut before the end of the year, then the next spring market will probably be on fire.
Yeah. Right, because it's supposed to trend down a couple more times, assuming everything else is the same, right?
Yep. I think that we will get I think that we'll do 2 to 3 quarter 25 basis points rate cuts between now and the end of the year for a total number of 50 to 75. And it'll be done over 2 to 3 months, right? I think we might get. I think we might do 1 cut, a wait and see. I think it's more likely just 2. I think it'll be 50 basis.
Do they do that?
Initial one.
Yeah. Do they have they have the opportunity to adjust every month? Is that how it works?
Yes. Yep.
Got it. All right. Let's talk politics for a minute, because we're putting these out. So, by the way, these episodes, you don't even know this. There had been kind of a delay. We had some back episodes. They're getting released on Fridays, basically until we're caught up. But these ones that we record now, I'm putting them out when we're done today.
Okay.
So they're going to be timely. So to talk about current events and stuff like that is relevant, at least for us, so that we can still talk about fun stuff and not have to worry about, being 2 weeks or 3 weeks after, Trump's assassination attempt. Then we're talking about it, out there to the world. So let's talk about politics real quick as we wrap this up. Mm-hmm. How you feeling right now? Keen, how you feeling right now on the presidential election?
Oh, I mean, well, it's kind of just it's kind of just coasted towards what I feel like is the most obvious result. Biden was gonna, was losing faith of his followers. They swapped.
Yep.
I've been waiting to see anything. I at least, what's so funny is like only in the last month or so have I actually could say that I can even identify what Kamala Harris sounds like. I'm like, oh, okay, that's what her voice sounds like, right?
That's the craziest thing, though, right? So she's not doing interviews. She's not really even doing press conferences. Whether there's going to be a debate of any kind is like just always up in the air. Every time that she's supposed to have showed up to sort of an impromptu event or something like that, just has not. I think that's interesting, Like, I don't know if it's a strategy or if they're trying to hide her. It's kind of working, but it's not going to, I don't think it's going to work very much longer because, the what she's dripping out, I don't think is, people are really super excited about. And
I do feel like her conversations about like the price fixing,
I'm
not loving that.
No.
I think that the market does a good job of fixing pricing when you use the right monetary policy. I mean, we've already seen that with the Fed did when they raised interest rates, right?
Yeah. The problem is, though, she's talking about price fixing groceries, which there's no margin in the grocery business. Like it's a 2, 3, 4% markup. I mean, they're not price gouging. Shit is expensive. You know what I'm saying? Like all the way down the production line, transportation costs have increased and just production costs have increased. By the time it makes it to the store, that's just how much, feed for animals, everything is up. So everything goes up, when,
Yep.
and even in the last, I don't know, a couple months or so, and I'm not like, don't have my thumb on the pulse of this thing, but when those costs go down, then the cost of those goods also tends to go down, so I think like milk is a little bit cheaper than it was, like chicken's a little bit cheaper than it was, but to call out like the grocery industry for price gouging is kind of, I think it'd be like calling out the restaurant industry for price gouging, like it's so competitive.
Yeah, they already kind of did that. And so in our area, they raised the minimum wage. And for a lot of people, they're just like, okay, I'll just get out of the business. And the people who stayed in were like, okay, we're going to charge, service gratuity, but we're not going to necessarily give all of it to the servers.
Right.
And it's
John Howie doesn't give their servers any of the gratuity. They charge you 20% and they tell you that it's not going to the servers,
Yeah.
Which is interesting. Why not just mark everything up 20% and say there's no tipping allowed? But, to John Howie's credit, they do treat their people really well. They actually do have good benefits. I think they get paid well. There are some like good things, but the way it's presented to you as the customer doesn't feel great, But I guess if they did the 20% just markup on everything, then all the prices would be 20% more. And then that would be, maybe people just feel that more than doing it the other way. But man,
yep,
it's crazy. So I'm hoping for, I saw something really good, and I'm not going to be able to find it, but it was just like the questions that, because
I don't know if she even really believes that price fixing is actually something that she could do. She might be just picking something that historically people can promise. And anyone who really knows how that works would say it's not going to work. But if it's going to help her get votes from the people who aren't as educated, then why does it matter? I think she's just trying. I don't think she has I really believe that Obama cared about changing healthcare. Like that was, it wasn't popular with everyone in his camp.
Right.
But it was,
and he had a perspective
really
on it too, right? He's thought about it. It was whether or not you like the policy or the idea, at least it was based on some kind of
well thought out, clearly his, and
there were some benefits, some downsides to the plan, but at least it was like a plan, you know? Yeah, I just don't think there's a lot.
I mean,
I don't know.
if I, I can't tell if it was a good idea. For me, it was just extra tax.
Yeah.
You know,
Right.
it has no impact in my life.
Yes.
Just tax. But it might be better for the general public. So
correct. To be fair to, not to be fair, you're not worried about your healthcare costs. Is what I'm trying to say. You know what I'm saying? Me either. It just doesn't hit the same, but some of those things hit for a lot of people. You know, like that.
Yep.
It does make a difference. Even a couple $200, $300 a month can make a huge difference in a lot of people's lives, you know?
Which is why I don't say if it's good or bad policies, because it's like, okay, well, for me, it ended up being more tax, but I mean, technically I can afford it. And if it helps a lot of other people, then maybe it was fine. It was good, you know?
Yeah. I think the question is always, you know, what, is it actually helping? Right. You know, it's like, oh yeah, she's also like, gosh, all these crazy tax things. Have you heard of these? Like they're supposedly for the ultra rich, but like your 45% capital gains tax before you sell your property. So you would just value, like if you had $100 million business right now, you would just owe $45 million right now before you even liquidated or sold. And like, yeah, it's kind of just weird things like that like they sound good on paper. Like if you don't have any money, but what you don't understand is that just stifles investment. You know, it stifles growth. Like, you know, insane, kind of insane.
Yep.
But anyway, all right. I wish I could find these questions that they listed. They had a bunch of good questions for her that I thought were interesting. You know, just like things like an interesting one. This is not really related to her campaign, but is something interesting. Like how did you feel about Biden and his mental capacity and his ability to run for a second term? You know, that's an interesting question.
For her.
Even also, like, look, there was another question. This is completely in lines with the election, which is, you know, what are your policies and how do they differ from the Biden administration or what the Biden plan would be? How, you know, what would you change if you could change something? Are there any, you know, sort of Democratic Party philosophies that you don't agree with, you know, whether big or small, like on the ticket, you know, because you would think no one is like right along party lines in reality, you know?
I already know what's going to happen. She's going to walk that line as close as she can get it, answering as little as possible. And the more she opens her mouth, the more it's going to hurt her.
Yeah. Yeah. I think you're right. I just don't think. And I'm not
saying it's because she doesn't have opinions or people don't like her opinions. It's that it's just a strategy to win.
Yeah.
Like the Democratic Party was positioned to lose on the sole basis that Biden just wasn't fit to be a president, and they just could not have confidence in the person who just can't even walk or finish his sentences. And so
they're still rolling on this. She's not Biden. is there like political slogan right now? Right.
Yeah.
And she's not Trump. She's both.
Yeah. Yeah. She's basically like, look, if you don't like either of their options, then pick me.
Yeah.
And you can keep asking me all these tough questions, but maybe I'll wait as long as I can to not answer them. And
she's not even getting no one's asking her any questions right now from what I can see. You know,
so people can criticize saying, you know, what's her politics and she fit for office and all that stuff. But I think that the truth is that I'd say that I myself am a good candidate for this. I don't know what you stand for.
Right.
I know what Trump stands for. And some of it I think is okay, and some of the stuff he's done has been pretty shitty. So, you know, I'm just like, you know, like, so maybe I will pick the person I just think is the lesser, because people said like, what's the, I think for a lot of this year, it's been who's the lesser of two evils between Biden and Trump. And then here's a secret way to have a third option where we weren't picking that person. We were just not picking the other people.
Yeah.
And that might win.
I mean, look, if that's don't hate the player, hate the game. You know what I'm saying?
People can criticize whether or not she, should do that and what's the real politics and her fit to be a leader and all that stuff. But look, at the end of the day, if your goal is to win, do what you think you need to do to win.
Right. And I just don't, I don't, this is like politics aside. I just don't think she's a strong candidate. Like you haven't heard a lot of substance out of her. And there's also just not this charismatic quality about her either. It's like it's like she was the VP and there was nobody else that was good enough to come in like this late in the game to try to make a run at it. I think, which is fine. Again, it's fine. Good for her.
Yeah.
Good for her.
I can't even answer whether she hasn't showed me leadership qualities, but like I don't think she's even tried, has she? I think she's
I'm just saying there was 4 years she's VP. Is VP in the spotlight all the time? No, not necessarily. But I mean, literally not even one, nothing, nothing. And so again, I definitely don't have my thumb on politics, and I don't pay as much attention to that.
I don't pay much attention, but I do hear in the background, like the polling, it's not that she's winning.
What I've heard is it's too close to call.
What I've seen is that she's winning and the spread is small, but it's growing.
Well, it depends on what you mean by winning. If you go state by state, it's very, very tight. We're not talking about like the polls, 50% to 49%. We're talking about if you analyze the states and where the races are close, it's extremely close, right? When we're talking about winning the presidency, not like popular opinion, the states where it matters are very, very close.
Right? Yeah, the swing states.
Yeah. They're very, very close. I think it kind of depends on the week and just how the tides are moving. But that's what and again, I'm literally just like not, I don't pay attention. I just don't care, honestly.
You know why I pay attention a little bit? I think it's
why.
I think it's entertaining. Like I feel like I'm watching history.
So, me too. I'm fascinated just by the process in general, how the marketing, the copy, the messaging, these type of things. I love seeing how all of that plays out. But the end result, I have a strong, am I going to feel defeated if either person wins? Absolutely not.
I can see the pros in either side.
Well, I'm just saying that you have no idea. It's impossible to know what's going to happen, and the presidents don't have that much power in the grand scheme of things. They have to work with other people that want to, do things with them. Their ideas are just ideas unless they can convince.
I will say though
Congress.
That Trump, whether you agree with his policies or not, he does push hard. His policy changes.
Look, I hated the dude, but then when you hear people explain what he did when he was the president, it really wasn't all terrible.
No.
Like he did a decent job, I think, in the job. The problem is he's just so divisive as a person.
Yeah.
And I understand that because he is very, very divisive as a person, that it just makes people crazy, both ways, which is fascinating,
It's very much a modern day Game of Thrones, isn't it?
For sure. Oh yeah. It's so much craziness, but it is fun to watch. And like I said, on Wednesday after the election, I'm going to wake up and come in here and get to work, and it's not going to matter who's in charge, and they can only mess things up so much, because they have, it bounces, it goes, the pendulum swings back and forth. Right. So, all right, cool. Let's wrap it up.
Yeah.
That was fun. All right. That's it for today. I'm Chris.
I'm Keen.
This is the Business Barbershop Podcast. See ya.
See you guys later.